Welcome to Silberman Law Firm's Weekly Docket, episode 26, where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is July 11th, 2024, and I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the firm and your host. I'm joined by Austin Black, my co-host, who works in our Dallas office. How are you doing today, Austin?
Doing just fine. Ready to get into the show.
All right, sounds good. Were you listening to some pre-show music?
I was, based off of your recommendation. I actually wasn't listening to any music before you said that, but I started listening to some, yeah.
I've been inspired because my oldest plays baseball, and baseball players have walk-up music.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should have some kind of pre-shoot podcast music. So what were you listening to?
I was listening to a song called Absinthe. It's by a Korean rap.
Okay, there's some similarities, and I too was listening to a song about alcohol. I assume is absinthe technically a type of alcohol, a very strong alcohol, or am I misunderstanding what absinthe is?
Absinthe is a type of alcohol. It is something a lot of famous writers had issues with. I think Edgar Allan Poe was addicted to it. Like, he thought it had some hallucinogenic properties. A few other people, it does not have hallucinogenic properties. It's just like an anise-based spirit. Disgusting. I hate it. But the song is good. So,
is it legal to drink in the United States?
It's legal to drink absinthe, yeah. There are certain varieties of absinthe that are not legal. It's like normally there's like a special like absinthe glass, and you put like a sugar cube on top of a spoon and then have like light that sugar cube with a lighter and then have it fall into the absinthe to dilute it.
Okay. Well, you have to drink something like that to do this show, so I can understand.
It's very pretty. It's very pretty. It's like bright green, but it's disgusting.
Okay. I was listening to Copperhead Road by Steve Earle. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not, but
no, I know Steve Irwin, not Steve Earle. So.
Yeah, it was a song from 1988. It's about a guy who I think ends up flying helicopters full of cocaine, who was inspired by his grandfather, who was a moonshiner. I think that's basically the essence of the song.
Definitely equivalent. Yeah. You just graduate from the grandfather traffics cocaine, then you just become a moonshiner, or vice versa.
All right. Those are officially our walk-up songs for episode 26. But that said, what's on our docket today, Mr. Black?
First, we're going to be going over some case updates, and then we will be getting into our legal news section with, I guess, coincides with our update. And first, we'll be talking about a firework mishap that occurred at Utah Stadium on the 4th of July. And then we will be doing a deep dive into the Alec Baldwin trial, which is actually currently going on. So we'll be giving some updates to what's occurred thus far, some associated cases, and then our thoughts on how we think it might come out one way or another. Then we'll be jumping to our legal questions section, talking about first, when an owner of a dog is liable for the dog biting someone. So if your Chihuahua goes off and has a rabid attack running around the city biting everyone, are you liable for that or not? We'll let you know. Then second, what are different types of mail services and their legal applications? So you may have heard of certified mail, sending things via regular mail, sending things FedEx, all that sort of stuff. What the differences are in their legal application. And then I'm reading our show notes here, and I don't entirely understand why this is under the legal questions section. But we have is, what does the term butt hurt mean? Is that just like you wanting to know, Phil?
It's a legal term.
Asked me. I could have just told you out of the show.
No, this is a legal question. It's
okay.
Used by a certain segment of our clientele that we provide services for. And certain industries use certain terms, and we need to educate our listeners.
Okay, got it. Okay, we'll be going over the legal term butt hurt, which I did not realize had a legal application, but we'll be going over that. And then our rant and rave section, where we'll be talking about the minimum wage disparities across the U.S. and how that impacts our economy.
Okay, before we get started on our legal news, let's talk about an update because, Austin, last show, you mentioned that a Texas judge made a ruling for injunctive relief related to the non-compete ban. And that was true, but that's also very not exactly true because the ruling was more restrictive.
No, it was true. Okay, it had just happened, all right? Like, we have a little bit more understanding of it now because we actually have the language of the ruling. Yeah, it was more restrictive. It applies just to the plaintiffs in that particular case.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to give our listeners a little history, everyone will remember that the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, passed a rule banning non-competes all over the country. When that news broke, we said that the FTC does not have the power to do that kind of rulemaking, right? Of course, it was challenged, and in Texas, the plaintiff that challenged it was a tax services law firm based out of Dallas, and took that case to federal district court, and the judge Ada Brown issued an injunction saying, okay, the FTC cannot do that, but the injunction only applied to the plaintiffs in that case. So the rule is not set to go into effect. The FTC rule banning non-competes is not set to go into effect until September of 24. So it's not a rule yet, but we've predicted on the weekly docket on this show that is really never going to happen. The federal courts are going to get involved. There's going to be an injunction. Eventually, the Supreme Court may rule and say, no, the FTC does not have that kind of power. And we're already seeing that unfold. Austin, have you been following the Supreme Court's ruling related to administrative rulemaking and the Chevron deference? Okay. Can you tell the listeners about that?
Yeah. So Chevron deference is a term that anyone who goes to law school is familiar with. Usually you have to take some sort of administrative law class. And what administrative law is, it's a sort of rulemaking that's done by the subsidiaries of the executive branch. So like Department of Health, all those sorts of things, like a lot of rulemaking applications, and then the USCIS, immigration, all those sorts of things. Rulemaking, it's not judicial, but they have administrative courts there. And Chevron deference basically says that if a case not involve definition of an administrative rule is in actually the judiciary, if there is a ruling that the court in their discretion determines is ambiguous, they can defer to the agency's interpretation of that rule. So if the agency decides that this thing that the court that's ambiguous means one thing, the court's very likely going to defer to that interpretation of the rule according to Chevron deference. Recently, that was overruled by the Supreme Court. Chevron deference was pretty much along ideological lines. And this, as we were just talking about the FTC situation, when we originally talked about that, and as Phil said, we thought that this was very likely to be forestalled from going into effect. And then eventually the court would rule that the FTC does not have that authority to do that sort of basically lawmaking. And now that's almost 100% certain for the Supreme Court to walk back the Chevron deference to overrule the Chevron case. It's much more likely that the FTC's attempt to promulgate this final rule is going to be ruled unconstitutional. So.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent explanation. If I were to try to break that down for our listeners, I would probably say something like liberal, and there's nothing wrong with your explanation. Brass tacks. Liberal Democrats love rules, and they love the administration, the executive branch. They love the FTC, the EPA, all of these rulemaking bodies to basically have power, carte blanche. They want it to be, that's what they consider the best environment to be. Conservative Republicans generally favor less rulemaking, the less power in these agencies that are not elected by the people. So you have those tensions that exist. And the Chevron case, way back when I was in law school, or I can't remember when was the Chevron case, Austin, but way back when Austin was in law school, the Chevron case basically said these rulemaking agencies should have deference. There should be certain authority given to them if there's ambiguity in the rule. And now this recent Supreme Court decision has said, no, that's no more. So this is a win.
1984. So that was a
1984.
event. Yeah.
For it. So I was definitely in law school after the Chevron ruling. So we've seen an erosion of the power of rulemaking agencies like the FTC. So generally speaking, if you're pro-business, if you're conservative, if you're Republican, this is a win for you. If you're a liberal Democrat and you want more rules and more regulation, then this is a loss.
A little bit more nuanced that isn't necessarily along party line. It is something people on the left say, right? A lot of the time, people who are in those positions in these various agencies do have some sort of expertise in that particular field. For instance, the Department of Health, they're probably doctors or have experience in health administration, something like that. So the argument there is that those people are experts and they would know what the best interpretation of certain things are. But then there's also pushback on that, both from the right and the left at times, giving examples of people who are in those positions who are absolutely not experts, or they just make rulings along their own ideological preferences. And so it is messy, but with Chevron being overruled, it seems like we're just going to get judges on making decisions and they're not going to be able to punt the ball back to the agency anymore. So.
Okay. So that's like when Anthony Fauci ruled the country during COVID, right? Because he was a health expert.
He helped, I think, with various quote unquote emergency powers. We probably still would have gotten there, but
yeah. All right. We know how well that went with Dr. Fauci and all that, but let's go ahead and move along. Let's kick off our legal news section and let's start with this fireworks thing in Utah. So on July 4th, there was a concert, a big fireworks display. Austin, are you a fan of the Jonas Brothers at all?
Am I a fan of the Jonas Brothers? Yeah. I am hoping I can live until the year 3000 so I can just experience people listening to that song in the same year. It's probably not going to happen. But.
No, not going to happen. The Jonas Brothers were getting ready to perform in Utah, and there was a fireworks display. Really tragically, the display went very poorly, and these fireworks were shot errantly into the stands where all the spectators were. 6 people were injured, taken to the hospital. This was at BYU's Lavelle Edwards Stadium in Provo, Utah.
So it's very sad that people were injured. That's not what I'm laughing at.
Yeah.
You really know your career is just like on its last leg when for the 4th of July, you're performing at BYU.
Okay, now come on.
It's really rough.
That's let me apologize in advance to all of our BYU alumni listeners.
I'm sorry. I can just say anywhere in Utah. There we go.
Oh, okay. Utah is not a great music state, maybe. I don't know. But hey, the Jonas Brothers are performing in Utah. Fireworks go awry and you get some people injured. This is obviously a terrible thing. There's been a lot of news coverage around sort of these events that had problems. We've talked about being Texas-based lawyers. We talked a lot about the Astroworld event and what happened there. And what was the name of that rapper again, Austin?
Jude? It wasn't Jude. It was Travis Scott, right?
Travis Scott. Yeah, the Travis Scott Astroworld issue where those people were stampled to death. That was tragic. I don't think anyone was killed here. There was maybe a serious injury from the fireworks. 6 people hospitalized. And again, from a legal perspective, almost certainly lawsuits will come out of this. It's likely going to be a negligence type of case.
Yeah. We don't know exactly the extent of the injuries as of yet. It's still being determined. Yeah.
You go see something in a stadium, the event, the people running the thing, there's a duty not to shoot you with a firework. That would be one of their duties. And I think when you get shot with a firework, that's likely a breach of that duty.
I think that duty is unreasonable personally, but to each their own.
That's going to be some lawsuits. We'll keep everyone updated.
Speaking of shooting people with things beyond firework.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, that's our next legal news topic here. We have deep dive into the Alec Baldwin trial. I don't know how deep we can go on this.
I mean, if you want a deep dive, I think multiple news organizations, because there are a lot of journalists in the courthouse who are providing like minute by minute updates. I was following it earlier. This is interesting.
Well, there's a group. I think the trial is actually being recorded
Televised?
and televised on court TV.
Oh.
I have not watched much of it. For listeners don't know, Alec Baldwin, obviously famous actor. He was shooting a movie called Rust, I believe, in 2021.
Definitely was shooting it.
Yeah. Oh boy, he was shooting a movie called Rust 2021 in New Mexico, and on the set, again, tragically, someone was killed. I can't figure out whether he was in mid-scene or he was just on set and this gun discharged. We don't know the facts yet.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was a situation where he was in the middle of the scene and he was supposed to shoot someone and then the bullet flew by. I heard that this was off on the set while they were not filming and the gun discharged. His story is that he never actually pulled the trigger.
That he just cocked it, because that was in the script. He just cocked the gun, and when he cocked it, it went off. That's what he said.
Okay.
Yeah.
The person who died was cinematographer Hanya Hutchins. There also was an injury to the director, Joel Sousa. And Baldwin is being charged with involuntary manslaughter in New Mexico, which carries a maximum punishment of 18 months. The armorer, that's the person, Austin, who's in charge of all the guns and
Yeah.
they're not supposed to have live ammunition. She was already convicted of involuntary manslaughter. She's serving 18 months. She's saying that she's a scapegoat.
Maybe she is, but it's crazy because I told you I was following, and I don't want to watch the live thing because I don't really like Alec Baldwin's face. So if I can avoid seeing that and get the information on it, I'm going to take that route. But the defense showed various pictures of the rounds that they were using for the gun, and they were live rounds mixed in with dummy rounds, like more than just this.
And they say you never do that. If you're a Hollywood expert, you say if you're the armor, that can never happen.
Yeah, which is crazy. I feel like that probably is somewhat on the armor, but I don't know.
Yeah, that I think that fact is what really I think got the armor, or the fact that she had live rounds in the ammunition case or wherever they put
How
it.
do you do that? That's so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got it's trial. He's in the middle of trial right now. One of the interesting things is there was a motion before the trial and the prosecution wanted to say that he was a co-producer. So as a co-producer, he has this greater responsibility over the filming and the set, and the defense objected to that, and the judge ruled that fact could not be brought in.
And that's interesting. I wasn't aware because obviously we don't practice entertainment law. We don't really even get close to that. So I wasn't aware that carried specific like liability concerns when it came to movies. Is interesting.
Yeah, I mean they wanted to show that he exerted this type of control.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of Alec Baldwin?
No,
do you like?
I don't like his face. Like his face just bothers me, and that's not because of like his political opinions or anything. I know he's become more vocal with that recently. I just really don't like his face. So yeah.
He has a reputation for being a real jerk.
Yeah.
Is what I've heard. And they've got some footage of some crazy stuff that he's done. I guess he's a pretty good actor.
I think my favorite thing that I've seen, like there have been some things from Alec Baldwin that I've enjoyed. My favorite things I've seen from him is I loved when he did Trump on SNL. Like he did such a good parody of it. I really enjoyed that.
I 100% agree with that. One of the greatest movies of all time, if you're in sales and real estate sales. Have you ever heard of the movie Glengarry Glen Ross?
No.
Okay. It's a movie, I want to say it was shot in the late 80s, early 90s, all-star cast. Alec Baldwin is in it, and he does this monologue he's the top salesman, and he does this monologue of coming down to the sales office and giving a motivational speech for real estate agents. It's an incredibly inappropriate movie. I'm not even sure it could be made at this time. I think it makes fun of a lot of Indian people, like sales people trying to sell real estate to Indian people.
Yikes.
So there's a lot of racist stuff in there that I don't think people tolerate.
Yeah, no, I think the equivalent for my generation is DiCaprio's Jordan Belfort in Wolf of Wall Street. I think giving his, I think that's the equivalent for my generation. So,
okay.
The movie.
Yeah. So Alec Baldwin. I think he's a good actor.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see how this trial comes out. I think it's a raw deal. I've said this before. We covered this on a previous show. You're dealing with guns. You're the actor. The assumption is they hand you a gun. You're acting. You assume the thing is not live.
Sure. And
So-
there's been absolutely nothing that's come up about any animosity that Baldwin had towards this like person who was killed or
No.
injured or anything of the sort. So I don't know. I don't think I don't really like the guy. Don't think you should go to prison for this. So
I agree with that. We don't know all the facts. I wonder if he was a more popular, lovable person, if he would have even been arraigned.
probably not.
So I don't like if Taylor Swift were to do a show when there was a prop gun in it. I don't even think Taylor.
I mean, I don't think, to be honest, if I was the prosecutor who would have authority, jurisdiction over that case, I would not bring it for fear of my own life. I do not. I would be swiftly moved from life to death.
I think Taylor Swift could probably shoot someone intentionally and
probably.
not be prosecuted for it.
Like Trump's whole thing about like I could shoot someone on the street and no one would care. No, I actually think that there were the people who would be totally fine with it. It was great anyway.
Yeah, we're going to see what happens with this Alec Baldwin case. It's unfolding now. So you got to. We're not criminal lawyers, but manslaughter in New Mexico. All right, let's move on and answer some legal questions. And we've got the dog bite thing. So when is the owner of a dog liable for a bite in Texas? If you're a dog lover out there, you have a dog, and I always feel bad for these people, Austin, where they're walking their dog and they've got the dog on the leash, and who knows, maybe the dog sees another dog, a person. You've always got that guy out there with the dog is like just basically walking the owner and trying to get a hold. And then if you're like me and you don't have a dog, you just like walk around the dog, especially if it's like a pit bull or a Rottweiler or something like that. But
wait, but you have a problem with the pit babies?
Aggressive breed dogs. Some people that are really like pit bull fans or Rottweiler fans. There are no aggressive breeds out there.
Owners. Yeah, okay, yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's why I see so many Chihuahua rampages through the country. Like, I don't know, man.
I've had dogs before. I do like dogs. We don't have dogs anymore because the kids basically can't clean up after themselves. So my rule is if the kids can keep from dropping things on the floor and leaving them there for a period of 2 weeks, then I will get them a dog, and they have been unable to even do that task. Dad does not want to take care of a dog again. But so the idea, what's the law, Austin? If you were to describe the Texas law on the one bite rule, are you familiar?
Yeah, I can describe it. So in the word of our illustrious former president, George W. Bush, if you fool me once, you can't be fooled again. Okay, so the dog bite liability has to be, it deals with what's called the one bite rule, right? If the dog has bitten someone in the past, or you have another reason to know that your dog has the propensity to act aggressively or to bite people, and you do not take preventative measures to stop that from happening, then you're very likely liable. Now, if your dog has never done that in the past at all, or is, and again, there are some breeds that just have a propensity to act aggressively. For instance, pit bulls, etc. Pit bulls and some other dogs like that can even bypass this one bite rule, right? If you have a dog like that who is just considered aggressive, then you can be liable for the first one if that is sort of breed there in the situation.
See, I didn't know that. And because I own a property management company, we have a real estate practice. We don't do personal injury. We have being connected to real estate. A lot of this stuff happens on property, so it's real estate related. We have done some dog bite cases. And I think it's interesting whether the plaintiff could submit evidence that Rottweilers and pit bulls are more aggressive, and that somehow would automatically make the owner negligent.
It's not an automatic thing, but it is factored into consideration.
So something the jury can hear. The jury can hear statistics on pit bulls and Rottweilers being aggressive, maybe, and that goes to perhaps creating a lower standard for the plaintiff to prove that burden of negligence against.
Yeah, and we have a case here, Marshall v. Rain in 1974 in Texas, which established that the owner's prior knowledge of a dog's dangerous propensities is crucial for that liability. And so if the owner is aware that like Rottweilers or Pit Bulls have a propensity to be especially dangerous, that could be Helligan.
Yeah. So if you have a dog out there and it's bit someone, you really are almost, if the dog bites someone again, you're basically guaranteeing liability on the second or third, even the third time. Yeah. So that's that rule.
And these are not like, usually if something like this happens, it's not a small thing, right? These are some major medical bills, etc., like pain and suffering. If you have a dog that you're aware of that has a propensity to do this, I think you're really not protecting yourself if you keep that dog around.
Yeah. Now, there's something called comparative negligence,
sure.
And this is the concept. This came up in the outline.
Yeah.
The idea. Let's say, Austin, you're walking your dog.
Walking or let's say you're walking your dog. You are walking your 2 Pit Bulls and 2 Rottweilers, okay? Walking those, and they're on the leash, or you're holding them, you're walking them on a Sunday morning, and I come over, and I've never interacted with these dogs before in my life. I run over, and I start trying to pet all 4 of them on the head at the same time, okay? And then I get viciously mauled, right? There's probably some comparative negligence there.
Okay. And that, yes. And what in Texas, if you're the plaintiff, you cannot be more than 51% liable or 51% at fault and recover.
Yeah.
You can be a little bit at fault, right? So in Austin's example, let's say I'm just an idiot and maybe, here's Austin walking his Pit Bulls and I go and pet them. Maybe the jury finds that I'm only 25% at fault because, hey, I was petting some random Pit Bulls. Or hypothetically, let's say I decide that I like to wear chicken bones as a necklace around my neck, right? Yeah. I walk out of the house with a chicken bone necklace on, and then I go pet the Pit Bulls, and the Pit Bulls maul me. I'm probably over 51% negligent there or at fault, so I'm prohibited from recovering in the state of Texas. So
that does make sense, yeah. The comparative negligence thing comes up a lot more often in like car crashes, comparative negligence all the time, right? Especially with rear ends, right? Someone like pulls out in front of someone and they get rear-ended. Normally, the liability is on whoever hit them from the back, right? But if someone just jerks out and goes in there, and then the person who hit them from behind tries to sue, the person who pulled out in front of them, tried the people who hit them from behind, there it's kind of going to be a little bit harder to argue that they were not more than 51% liable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have another interesting fact about this, the 1 bite rule and animal liability. Austin, you may remember, we just finished doing a piece on the 10 Commandments. So it got me back into Exodus, and I was reading Exodus, and I'm convinced that this rule is this law, the 1 bite rule, is one of the oldest laws that we've had because I found it here.
Put this up in classroom.
I don't think they would have, maybe they would not object to this one so much. Okay, so Exodus 21, 21st chapter, verses 28 through 29. If a bull gores a man or woman to death, the bull is to be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten. But the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, and this is the 1 bite rule, if, however, the bull has had the habit of goring and the owner has been warned, but has not kept it penned up, and it kills a man or woman, the bull is stoned, and its owner is also to be put to death.
So that's very interesting. I did not remember the law in the Old Testament law, but man, I kind of feel sorry for everyone who was trying to stone the bull. Can we please have a more efficient way of exterminating the bull? Can we please just cut it?
I see. It's an animal cruelty thing.
Well, not necessarily. I'm not even worried about the bull. Look, if the bull is goring people, I don't care about animal cruelty, okay? Just saying an efficient way to kill the bull. I'm just imagining all these Israelites over here. Keep throwing stones at the bull.
It does seem like it would take a long time to stone.
A really long time, man. These guys are getting a workout, okay?
Of course, with all the transgressions that resulted in stoning, the community, right, are
quite good.
Right. Our people have gotten excellent at stoning.
Yeah.
There you have it. Moses, that was about the time of Moses. So you figure Moses about 1500 BC. And then you're talking about 3,500 years ago, we've had this law. Now, we're no longer putting people to death, although I guess
stoning them. We don't do that here.
No.
Years we do.
Yeah, I guess it could be criminal. I mean, we were talking civilly.
Yeah.
Right. Like a plaintiff sues you and the defendant is liable. That's money owed. If you're talking about criminal, you've got this vicious pit bull and you let it loose. I can see that being criminal. I don't know what the punishment was. Probably not death. It's probably not a capital.
I don't think ever come to that. I don't think I've ever been a capital punishment. Yeah.
You can probably create a scenario where your pit bull.
If you're using it as a weapon, if you're using pit bull as a weapon or something, then absolutely there. But not.
So personal injury, dog bite rule. That's a lot. If you're a dog owner out there, if you're a landlord and your tenant has dogs, it also comes into factors there in negligence cases. There you have it. All right, let's get into something totally unrelated. And this sounds like a really boring and dry topic, and it's all about mail and U.S. Postal Service mail. And we're going to run through this really quick because I think people need to know this. And we as lawyers use the mail all the time. People are still using the mail. It's the digital age, right?
Yeah, and this is also, like, we were talking about biblical things. This is also biblical, right? One of the very first verses back in Genesis, God created the male and female, right?
Yes.
So,
that excellent tie-in. If there were any better of a segue to that, I don't know. I don't know what it would be.
Exactly.
Here's the most interesting thing to me. Don't read it, Austin, but did you know the difference between regular mail and first-class mail?
I guess in my mind, my concept is that first-class mail is faster.
Yeah, you're 100% right. First class mail is usually quicker. Standard mail is slower. But here's the interesting thing. Almost all envelopes are always set first class mail because the same postage rate applies for anything 1 ounce or under.
Okay.
So anytime you get something in the mail that's under an ounce, it's probably first class mail. I don't know who uses regular mail anymore. I guess if you're sending something that's over an ounce and you want to save money, then regular mail. As attorneys, we do send first class and regular mail, oftentimes because we send out the next thing we're talking about, certified mail and certified mail return receipt, right? So when we send out demand letters, Austin, you typically send them certified mail return receipt requested, right?
Typically, yep.
Yeah, and that's just a tracking. You send it certified mail, it means that the USPS, United States Postal Service, is going to track it. But if you send it return receipt requested, then you're asking the recipient to sign for it. That's that green card. And then the green card comes...
It's a different green card from, like, immigration, okay?
Yes, not...
Yeah, you can have both.
Austin used to be an immigration attorney, so we're talking about the green cards. Lawyers, we like to send things certified mail return receipt requested so we get the green card back. Now, you know this, Austin. A lot of times if we send something certified mail return receipt requested, it oftentimes will not be signed and it won't be picked up. And why is that?
Because people don't like receiving mail from lawyers.
Yes, or anything certified.
Or anything certified, yeah.
Okay, the general public out there believes that if they were to receive something certified, mail, that something bad's going to happen to them.
Yeah, it's really bad. By the way, that doesn't work the same way with, like, you get service of, let's say, for instance, a notice of a default judgment. Okay, if you get a notice of a default judgment and you ignore it, okay, it does not make the default judgment go away. Okay.
Yes.
PSA. Yes.
Yes. Please go down and get your certified mail return receipt. It's not, a dog is not going to jump out of the envelope and bite you. Your dog is not going to jump out of the envelope.
People previously, you may be entitled to compensation.
It's better to know and address the problem head on. But so as lawyers, when we send out things, when we send out demand letters, our clients will say, how do you say? We send it certified mail return receipt requested. We also send it, I'd say regular, but most likely first class mail because it's under an ounce. And that way, if there's ever question of did they get it, we'll tell the judge, well, judge, we sent it to him certified mail return receipt requested. We sent it to him regular mail or first class mail, and we emailed it to him, judge. And that's going to satisfy the judge that some diligent effort has been made to get them whatever we're trying to get them.
That's the same email. The court's been communicating with them as well, and they've been responding to that email. And then they tell the court, "Oh, we never got this." The court, "No, you got it."
So there's all kinds of laws where attorneys are still required to mail things, or people that are trying to comply with things. We've got a couple examples here. Notice to vacates and evictions. If you're doing an eviction, Texas Property Code Section 24.005, it just says the notice has to be delivered in person or by mail.
Yeah.
Doesn't specify how, but just by mail. So when you do those, Austin, how do you typically send them? Probably
certified mail return receipt requested. And again, it's not because it's required in the law, but it's always an element in these eviction cases, whether or not they received the notice to vacate, and just showing proof that it was.
Another example, as attorneys, oftentimes we do lien filings and on real estate. To perfect liens on real estate, we often have to send notices by mail. There's been a recent change, so that code has required certified mail with return receipt. There's a recent update where it said you can send by another form now as long as it's traceable. So that's allowed for things like FedEx or UPS if you want to send that. Send it that way. So look, that's the mail. I don't have a lot more to say about that, but that's what I wanted people to know and just cruise right through that. So hopefully that helps people a little bit on, if you get something certified, just go out there, just get it. It's better to know than not know.
Sadly, the people who do that, though, probably don't listen to this podcast.
Yeah. All right. But this brings us to our next legal question, which it doesn't really bring us to anything. We're not going to do any awkward segues. We're just going to go right into it. The legal term, and that's tongue in cheek, butthurt. Okay.
Okay.
And this comes up all the time because I had never heard this before, but
you had never heard this before until this week?
No, I had never heard this until we started having subcontractors and contractors that work on real estate as clients.
Okay.
And I first heard it when I started practicing and working with guys who work on real estate. It's typical. They're great clients, good guys, and they'll say, "Oh, Phil, this sub that I was using, he just got butthurt because I didn't want." And I didn't say anything, but at first I've never heard that term. What does butthurt mean? And it came up again this week because I was having coffee with my wife, and my wife was like, "What does?" I don't know how it came up. I think I started to use it. And she's like, "I'd never heard that." And I was like, "Really? You've never heard that?" So I emailed our producer and I said, "Put this in the show. We have to tell people what butthurt means."
I feel like 99.9% of our discussion topics were either rant or raves or immediately preceding are just sprung from conversations with your wife. It's very funny.
Oh, is that right? It could be. So basically, my wife gives us all of our topics, and then you love to apply them to Asian peoples. So that's...
I think that's you at this point, but sure.
Hey, your walk-up song to the podcast was a Korean rapper. I'm just going to remind you of that.
Yeah, that is
true. So when I was emailing, I voice dictate because I guess I'm old. Do you voice dictate? Do you voice dictate or no?
I will voice dictate maybe once every 2 weeks.
Okay. I voice dictate all of my texts and all of my emails and messages just because my thumbs don't work as fast as Austin's. But as I was voice dictating to Aaron about putting butthurt in the show, and what does butthurt mean, Austin? I mean, just give us so we can educate people.
It means upset. Pretty.
Well, yeah, but it's more like he was overly sensitive and he got his feelings hurt.
Yeah, it means unreasonably upset, like about something that they shouldn't have been upset about, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But am I correct that it's typically used by tradesmen and maybe less? Do you hear professional, educated people use the term butthurt very much?
No, I did have an opposing counsel use it once, and I was very confused. But no, I mean, I guess I don't have a lot of interactions with that demographic you gave just there. That may be the case. I've never associated it with anyone who has a lower level of education or anything like that. I've just associated it with more coarse discussion, like more coarse talk.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, all right. And not like in the levels of like profanity or anything like that, but I just don't generally use it in everyday conversation because I think it does come off as a little bit lowbrow.
Okay. So if you were in front of a judge arguing a motion and you were trying to say that the opposing party had no real damages and they were just butthurt. You
No,
probably wouldn't
I
say
would
that.
not say that. I would say the opposing party this is a completely frivolous case, and they swear it, and they're just upset because of this. Yeah.
It was a little quite. My wife at the time when I was voice dictating to Aaron, she said, "Don't talk about that in the show because I think you don't know what you're doing, and it might have something to do with sodomizing another man." I was like, I don't think that's all. So I did.
That probably would hurt in the butt area, but no, it has nothing to do with it.
I told Aaron to research it just in case, and it turns out that he could not find anything.
I really hope that messed up Aaron's like Google search recommendations now, and he's getting some very interesting ads.
Nothing, not just for the record, nothing to do with sodomy. Okay,
No.
but
Going back to Exodus, yeah, no, nothing to do.
look, I think this show can still have we don't have to put inappropriate content disclaimer on this show anymore. I don't think so. All right, let's go ahead and get on to our favorite section of the show, rant and rave section. We're talking about minimum wage disparities in the U.S. This has been in the news recently. You're always hearing a lot of politicians, let's raise the minimum wage, raise the federal minimum wage. Recently, you've heard Trump's tax proposal where he wants to not tax tips. And Austin, you may know in Texas anyway, you can pay something like $2 an hour to your waiters and waitresses, and then they get the rest of it in tips.
Which is insane. You should never have the onus on the customer to pay the employees a living wage. That is the job of the employer. Crazy to me. So crazy.
We talked a little bit about that on tipping, but that's a Trump proposal and I think what he's trying to do, I don't know if that's really going to go very far. I think he's trying to get the young vote because he knows that so many people out there, young people are doing hospitality and service. So by floating that, he hopes to get a little more young vote. It would basically, when you set policy like that, tax policy, that's going to incentivize all businesses out there to try to pay via tips to decrease that tax burden for their employees. The policy will have ramifications, but federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Very few jobs actually pay the minimum wage. That's under the Fair Labor Standards Act. There's been a lot of states out there that have set high minimum wage out of a policy standpoint, thinking all people should have a decent, livable wage. What are the top 5 highest minimum wages? Do you have that in the outline, Austin?
Yeah, I do. So Washington, D.C., and that's just Washington, D.C. proper, not the area around it, $17 an hour, very small area. Washington State is $16.28. I wonder how they come up.
That's probably a CPI index.
I'm sure they paid someone way more per hour to come up with that. And California is $16 per hour. Massachusetts, where you are right now, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Massachusetts, it's $15 an hour. And you said Gabe got a job. Is he making minimum wage?
Yes. And it's crazy because if he's working at a grocery store sacking groceries, if he were working at that same store in Texas, he'd get $7.25 an hour. But up here in Massachusetts, he works up here and I pay for him to live, obviously. Yeah. So he's making Massachusetts minimum wage on zero expenses.
That is nice.
It's a great deal. And then New Jersey at
New
$15.
Jersey, again, they probably paid someone way more to do this, but it's $13 per hour. So.
All right. And then what are our 5 lowest states for minimum wage?
Low states. All right. Georgia is $5.15. So they are below federal minimum.
Which the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, preempts their state minimum wage. That's probably just an antiquated law and they haven't changed it. $7.25. And then you've got Wyoming at $5.15. Our home state of Texas at $7.25. Alabama, Louisiana, both at $7.25. Your conservative states, lower minimum wages. Your liberal states, your higher minimum wages. Here's the rant on this. And politicians, I'm sure we've got some politicians that listen to the show. I don't know if there's any like high profile politicians, but maybe some.
I hope any politicians listening to this have the wherewithal to come up with their own policy positions.
Have you heard the Excel spreadsheet challenge for politicians out there. So
No.
a lot of the Wall Street bankers are, giving Congress the Excel spreadsheet challenge of, look, we're running this huge deficit, which is a long-term problem. Yes, we're the United States, so maybe not a short-term problem. But here's your Excel spreadsheet. Policy aside, you plug in the numbers on how to balance the budget and not run a deficit. You just show us how this works. Just show us the math. And the joke is that we don't know that any of the politicians have ever actually used Excel before. I'm sure there's a few, but all right. So the rant on this is setting a high minimum wage does not work from a policy standpoint. If you set higher wages, everything else comes up too. So if you're thinking you're doing people a favor by paying them $15, $16 an hour, all that's going to mean is everything gets more expensive in the state, so they still can't afford to live.
Yeah, I think it all, like all the tension, I think, comes from people having completely differing opinions as to what minimum wage should be, right? Some people, mostly people on the left, right, believe that minimum wage should be, quote unquote, a livable wage, right? That should be like something that someone can make and live and sustain themselves on it, right? No one could sustain themselves on $7.25 an hour, right? In Texas, maybe in some rural areas, but like in any major city area, no way. There's no way you can.
No, and in places like Massachusetts or California, if the minimum wage is $15 an hour, they're still not sustaining themselves.
Prices go up. Yes, absolutely. And so it's people trying to address symptoms without addressing root issues. And you're always going to have things like this when that happens.
Before we bring our show to a close and this is this political stuff of the minimum wage setting, you just got to let the free market do its thing. Sometimes, I'm not saying capitalism needs to run unchecked all the time, but generally speaking, when you let capitalism do its thing, the laws of supply and demand will work this out. And clearly the policy setting of the minimum wage in this instance is not getting the job done because, as Austin pointed out, everything else just gets more expensive. The final statistic I want to leave you with, and to highlight this point, the Big Macs, we always use McDonald's as a barometer of cost of living. And recently, Austin, you may have seen in the news that fast food companies are just currently in a fight because the cost of food is so high and our lowest income earning people are getting really still hammered with inflation. And remember, yes, inflation is running slower. The Fed is trying to get it back to 2-3% inflation, whatever. But we've still already have all of the inflation that's already happened. You still have 15-20% rise in costs post-pandemic. That's still already out there. So stuff is still expensive. The rate of growth of inflation is now just slowing. So you still have our lowest income earners still struggling. So the fast food companies out there are that's why McDonald's recently started a $5 menu. And then you've got these other fast food companies that are following suit, trying to appeal to their lowest income earners, who are the people that go and buy fast food. So we always use McDonald's as a barometer of how much things should cost and where. The most expensive Big Mac, have you looked at the outline? Don't look at the prices, Austin. If you had to guess, I want you to guess. Most expensive Big Mac, which state and how much?
I'd probably say Maryland.
You're close. It's expensive in Maryland. Most expensive Big Mac is around $8 in Massachusetts. A Big Mac will cost you $8.09 in a place called Lee, Massachusetts. And the cheapest Big Mac, Austin, in Oklahoma, I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it was Stigler, Oklahoma or something like that. I don't know what it was. Oklahoma will cost you $3.49 for that same Big Mac in Oklahoma. And the minimum wage is $7.25.
You ever eaten a Big Mac?
I haven't had one since I've maybe been like 10, maybe. So It's been a long time. Have you?
I've never had a Big Mac. I stopped eating at McDonald's 15 years ago. Yeah.
Nothing against McDonald's. I tried to eat at a McDonald's yesterday.
Yeah.
And I walked into a McDonald's. They have a little kiosk now, and I eat very healthy. I needed food. I tried to find one thing that was not fried.
Yeah.
And the McDonald's did not sell. They used to sell like a salad, a chicken sandwich. That is all stopped. You cannot buy one thing that
Oh,
is not
wow.
fried at McDonald's. Yeah, at least at the one I went to yesterday.
That's crazy.
To illustrate the point, if you look at the cost of that Big Mac in Massachusetts costing you $8, the minimum wage in Massachusetts is $15, so you're approximately twofold the minimum wage in Oklahoma. Your Big Mac also costs you about twice as much as well. So,
And it's not a bigger Mac. It's same Mac size, okay?
yeah.
Big. It's not bigger. Anything that.
So our politicians, I don't know why they can't do basic math. I challenge all the politicians out there. Take the Excel spreadsheet challenge. Look at these costs of Big Macs. Look at your minimum wage policy. Take the policy out of it. Take the policy out of it and take the politics out of it. And you figure out in the spreadsheet how you're going to balance the budget and how you're going to set economic policy.
Phil, you are way too optimistic, right? You think that they actually care about any of this. You think that they don't already know all of this. I guarantee you, like 99.9% of them already know everything that we're saying here. They know it's not going to fix anything. But their constituent, the ones who they're trying to get their vote, they don't. And so they're able to go and say, look at what I did. I raised the wage to this. And they don't care. They don't care about anything.
Either that or they're so out of touch with regular people. The best illustration of politicians being out of touch is 3 or 4 years ago. There was a race to be mayor in New York City, okay? Yeah. And they just randomly asked the guys running for mayor, how much should a house cost in Brooklyn? And I kid you not, several of them answered like $150,000 for a house in Brooklyn. There was in the Wall Street Journal mansion section, like a couple weeks into this past Saturday, there was the brownstones in Brooklyn were costing $8, $9, $10 million.
Yeah.
And the people running for mayor thought you could buy a place in Brooklyn for $150,000.
That is a good argument for if you don't know something, say you don't know it.
I think during the debate, they should ask the next debate, they should ask both Donald Trump and Joe Biden how much a gallon of milk costs.
Nah, I think that would be too hard hitting. I think they need to focus more on their golf game.
They could have a debate about it. All right, we have to wrap this up. That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silberman. Austin Black has been my co-host. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. Reminder, nothing in this show can be considered legal advice, not legal advice. This is all for entertainment purposes only. If you have a legal question, email us at info@silblawfirm.com. That's info@silb, S-I-L-B like boy, lawfirm.com. Tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. We'll do the best we can. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Ed. Bye.